Hare Krishna. Okay, we're live. I apologize for our late start. There's a number of technical issues today. Seems like everything that could go wrong has gone wrong so far. And in spite of all the obstacles and difficulties, here we are to have this important conversation. Thanks for making yourself available today, Prabhu, for this conversation.
Thanks for inviting me. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. It's just me today. Dana Davies unable to join us today at this point. I want to dive right into this. Hopefully my computer will come back. We can look at some transcripts. So I want to make an opening statement for you. Well, let me just actually, there's a lot of people who do know who you are, and then there will always be people who don't. So I think that the appropriate thing to do here would be to create for people who you are. Dhira Govinda, aka Dr. David B. Wolfe, author of several books, including Relationships That Work, The Power of Conscious Living. Another seminal work on the, I can't remember the exact name, it's the Druze, Vaishnavism in Israel.
Krishna, Israel, and the Druze, an interreligious odyssey. Yes.
Yes. You did your thesis on the Vedic personality index?
Yes. We back in the 1990s, I developed the Vedic personality inventory as part of my doctoral program. And my doctoral thesis is entitled Effects of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra on Stress, Depression, and the Three Gunas. And we've published that as a book also.
That was about empirical verification of the effects of chanting Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
You're the founder and director of the ISKCON Central Child Protection Office.
Yes, yeah, 1998, on the request of the ISKCON GBC, we established the ISKCON Central Office of Child Protection, and I served as director for the ISKCON International CPO for more than 6 years.
And you were temple president of ISKCON in Tel Aviv?
Yes, yeah, back in the 80s, temple president in ISKCON Tel Aviv, and then after that, we went to the Arab populations and led a book distribution program. All of that is the basis of our Krishna, Israel, and the Druze book. Yes.
Let me see what else I can recall. You've also written several very significant contributions to Vaishnava thought, the prominent link,
yeah,
the weightiest argument, and I'll throw out the three I know of: the prominent link, the weightiest argument,
right,
and Srila Prabhupada's Shastra. Those are the three that jump to mind.
Yeah, and there's several other booklets and articles that are related to those themes.
Yeah, I think all of that paints a picture of someone who's heavily invested, deeply committed to Srila Prabhupada's mission, made significant contributions, and really, I don't think it would be any exaggeration to say that this is your life.
I've endeavored the past 45 years or so to give my life to Srila Prabhupada and his movement, with much imperfection and shortcoming, but I've endeavored to do that. Yeah.
Anything else that you would like to say to create who you are in this conversation for people?
Oh, well, as far as services, in the 90s and early 2000s, I served as a member of the board of directors of ISKCON of Alachua, which even at that time was the largest devotee community in North America. And for most of those years, I was chairperson of the board of directors of it's also known as New Raman Reti ISKCON of Alachua. Also, in the past 25 years or more, several devotees, including there in New Zealand, they know me as I've developed and facilitated Vaishnava-based transformational trainings, which we conducted often in the name of Sattva Tov Institute. We've actually come to New Zealand 3 times to conduct them. Just so you're aware, you have the sign that says R in yellow in front on top of you. If you're okay with that, it's fine for me.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my computer to come back. It has come back. Just, I did not know. Actually, I did know that you had come to New Zealand once, but I didn't know that you'd been here 3 times.
Yeah, I was there in 2004, 2005, and 2015, and in 2004 and 2015, Atmananda Prabhu, along with some colleagues of his, like Srila Prabhu, they brought me to New Zealand, and then Surya Narayan and Kunja Kishore Prabhu's, they were involved in 2005. I was in Christchurch. 2004 and 2015 was more the North Island, Auckland area. So I was there 3 times. Yeah.
Great. And then I think the final one, very relevant to this, is that you're the founder and you were the founding director, co-director of the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation.
Yes. Yeah, about a year ago, a team of us, we founded the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation. And so I was and I'm honored to be a founding director for that entity. And I served as a director for almost a year, and I'm continuing to be very closely involved with the mission and aims of Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation.
Okay, I'm going to switch back to my computer, Prabhu, and while I do that, could you create for me and for the listeners, what is the Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation?
Okay, yeah. So Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation, we formed it, and I'll mention that I'm not at this time I'm not officially a director, but to create open discussion on the facts and realities related to the departure pastime of Srila Prabhupada, and to because our clear sense is that there's been concealment and cover-up and deception related to the facts and realities of the disappearance pastime of Srila Prabhupada. So to bring that to light, to awareness, so that the truths about that pastime of Srila Prabhupada become known, and through open conversations such as you're creating here, and also Justice for Srila Prabhupada, a foundation. A main part of its mission is to establish a culture in Prabhupada's movement, including this kind of organization, for a culture that's truly protective of children, and that involves exposing the cover-ups at very high levels of extreme and severe ongoing child maltreatment in the organization. So to clean that up, so that the organization becomes a safe place for children.
Okay, great. So we're going to be narrowly focused in our conversation today on this question of the poisoning of Srila Prabhupada, if we can put that in quotes, because it's a big topic that includes a lot of things within it. So I wanted to start from, you talked about knowing the truth about the final pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. I wanted to start with a statement and get your reflection on it, and that is about knowability and the knowability of the matter, the knowability in general and the knowability of this specific matter. In our Vaishnava Praman, we have the 3 main sources of knowing, epistemology, the ways of knowing. There's pratyaksha, empirical evidence, observation. There's anuman, logical inference, reasoning. And then there's shabda praman, or the statements of revealed scripture. And in order to derive siddhanta, or conclusive truth, the shastra praman or shabda praman is necessary. Anuman and Pratyaksha, empirical observation and reasoning, can reveal or support. They can reveal partial or inconclusive truths, but without the support of Shastra Praman, Siddhanta is impossible to arrive at, or a conclusive, absolute truth claim. And one of the a kind of an illustrative example of that is that someone may be convicted in a court of law, including convicted in a court of law. Court case goes through, they get convicted, they go to jail, they're in jail for 10, 20 years. It's written into the history books that they did it and they were guilty. Children are taught that in school. And then 20 years later, it comes out, actually, we got the wrong guy. And then they're released from jail and they have to pay him millions of dollars. So this shows that it's a on the court demonstration that Pratyaksha and Anuman are defective and ultimately unreliable. They can only give us something like probabilistic truths. But without Shastra Praman, we can't have a Siddhanta. And so it would seem that in the matter of understanding exactly what happened 50 years ago, if we only have available to us Pratyaksha and Anuman, we will never be able to arrive at a Siddhanta or a conclusive truth according to the standards of evidence required by Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So I appreciated your letter to me, inviting me to this podcast, and the wording, because in your wording, you used terms like Srila Prabhupada's hypothesis or possibly Srila Prabhupada's theory. So your focus is the Shabda Praman, the Shastra Praman. The last time you invited me onto the podcast last year was on Srila Prabhupada Shastra. So every vibration from Srila Prabhupada is Shastra. It's pure and perfect and transcendental. So that's Shabda Praman. Of course, we might receive it and process it in different ways according to our realizations or filters. That's another discussion. But so I appreciate that you're focusing there. And for me, and I feel safe to say, for Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation, that's always been the number one. When talking about Srila Prabhupada's disappearance pastime, my emphasis has always been, going back 27 years, and for sure now, even just recently, a week ago, we sent a letter. The Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation sent a letter to our mailing list, and we just said, hear from Srila Prabhupada about his disappearance pastime. And you can read this is very old-fashioned, I know. I still do like books and pages and things like that. This is volume 36 of Conversations with Srila Prabhupada. Hear what Srila Prabhupada says about his disappearance pastime. You sent me some links from the database, and then Truth Labs Forensic Services created a 23-minute video, audio, text presentation, Srila Prabhupada's words in English, including the Hindi and the translation of the Hindi. So my emphasis is, and always has been on this topic, on Anuman and Pratyaksha. They have their place, just as you nicely expressed, Prabhu. Anuman and Pratyaksha, they can support and they can supplement Shabda Praman. Anuman and Pratyaksha, they never override or supplant Shabda. And just to be clear, I'm not saying just hear directly from Srila Prabhupada, and then you'll come to the same conclusions as Dhira Govinda Das. I don't know about that, but I know hear from Prabhupada, that's a transcendentally good thing. And so that's our emphasis. That's my personal emphasis.
Okay. Yeah, the Shabda Praman can be divided into two categories, the Shruti and the Smriti. And the Shruti is considered to be the Veda, and then the Smriti are the Itihasas, the Puranas, the statements of the sages. So in that case, because some people will say, well, the statements of Srila Prabhupada are not necessarily Shastra. And you've made the case in your Srila Prabhupada's Shastra booklet that they are, and not everybody will accept that. But they do fall into his utterances do fall into the category of smriti, which, for example, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the collection of the statements of saintly personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And so let us hypothetically accept the statements of Srila Prabhupada as a form of Shabda Praman in the category of smriti, that which is heard and remembered from the saintly persons, and approach it from that perspective to give us some grounding in the firm ground of Vedic sound vibration. And we can hypothetically approach it in that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People may or may not accept it, but I invite people to join us in examining it from that perspective.
Yeah, every vibration from Srila, every act, everything from Srila Prabhupada is Smriti Shastra. That I'm clear on that.
Okay. So looking from there, there's a couple of conversations. Would you like to? Should we have a look at the conversations?
Sure.
Okay. Now, I know you haven't had time to look at this, but the transcripts that I sent you are the updates to the upcoming Veda-based 25, which is due out in May, and they contain, as far as I'm aware, for the first time, the translations of the conversation. So it's now possible for devotees to read those for themselves. When I first looked into this many years ago, back when you needed a real audio player on your computer to listen to any of the samples back in the 90s, there were no official translations of anything.
Right.
And so part of the issue there was that it was like, okay, you say that this is what he's saying, but like, how do I know that's actually what he's saying? There was no reference scripture or reference citation for it. But now there will be an official reference citation in the Veda-base. So I was hoping we could use that, because this is the one that devotees will be able to look at, and it will be the one that they'll accept, have the widest acceptance. And if there are variations from other translations that you've seen, we could also discuss those.
Okay. And I haven't read what you sent me, but I will say, based on what I understand it is, I'm glad that the BPT archives has produced this.
Yeah. Okay. So I have 771108 R2 in Vrindavan.
I have
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let me share my screen here.
Sure.
Present. Share the screen, and I'm going to share the screen here, which has both of the panels on it. And then here we go. So on the right-hand side, I have the Vedabase.io, the currently available one on the web, anyone can look at. And then on the left, I have the upcoming update to Vedabase 25. So in this conversation here, this is the one where Krishnadas Babaji is there, and then Balaram Mishra comes to visit Srila Prabhupada. So this is November. Let me switch to the correct one on this side. November the 8th, 1977, R2. So it means the second room conversation recording that we have of the day. If I'm correct about that, the way these are numbered. Ami, it says Balaram Mishra. Hindi. Ami Balaram Mishra. He says, I am Balaram Mishra.
Okay.
Now, the key one here is this line here, which says, Kaviraj, Hindi with Prabhupada. Prabhupada mentions poison, which is an editorialized note about the content of the conversation, but without giving us what Srila Prabhupada actually said.
Okay, yeah.
And so, let's have a look. When it says Hindi with Prabhupada, it's actually multiple back and forwards. So we can see here on the left, it's Kaviraj Prabhupada, Kaviraj Prabhupada. In this conversation here, Balaram Mishra comes, and then Prabhupada is speaking with Balaram Mishra. And then Srila Prabhupada says, all of a sudden my health became like this. It was working all right. I don't know what happened. Someone says that I've been given poison, maybe. in the translation on the Justice for Srila Prabhupada website, it says every work was going on fine, or work was going on well, and then suddenly this happened.
Okay.
But here, this is translated as Srila Prabhupada's health was working all right. I don't know what happened. And then this is really the crucial statement here, I believe. Someone says that I have been given poison, maybe. Your thoughts on that, Prabhu?
Well, you use the term crucial. I concur. It's a crucial statement. Yeah. I mean, everything from Srila Prabhupada and that statement, I believe, is crucial to understanding about what Srila Prabhupada's saying. Srila Prabhupada's Shabda Praman about his departure pastime. That's crucial. It looks to me like Prabhupada is indicating that that at least someone is saying that he has been poisoned. Maybe it's my conjecture, but it seems to me Prabhupada is indicating that he's at least suspicious, if not more than suspicious, that he's being given poison. He says maybe, so that's what it seems to me.
Okay. On that, my thought on that, Prabhu, is that whether Srila Prabhupada is suspicious would be a conjecture about his internal, some conjecture about like I just don't know. What I can see from this is that Srila Prabhupada says, someone says that I've been given poison. So he's reporting something that someone said to him. And then his assessment that he gives on that statement is maybe. So he's admitting he is creating the possibility. He's not saying it's not possible. He's not committing to it, but he's not ruling it out either, which is why I call it Srila Prabhupada's hypothesis. He presents it as someone else's hypothesis, but when he gives his evaluation that it may be,
he's saying, actually, in hearing you speak, Sitapati, when our first podcast 2 years ago in 2023, which was mostly about like Vaishnav communication, but somehow we touched on this topic, and you mentioned that your son, I believe his name is Prahlad Nrsinga, your son said to you in regards to the possibility that Prabhupada was criminally poisoned, your son said, it can't be ruled out. So you used that same language just now.
Yes. The thing about it is that essentially in the material world, simply from Pratyakshana Anuman, there's a lot of things that can't be ruled out. Like there's actually an unlimited number of hypotheses we could generate, up to and including that, Srila Prabhupada was a complex hologram generated by an alien race on the other side of the moon to deceive humanity. I mean, we don't have strong reasons to present such a hypothesis. It's not highly probable in the realm of everything, that there is, but we also can't rule that out. Anything's possible. We could be on a television show. We could be dreaming. There's an infinite number of possible hypotheses. But in the case of this one here, with every single person, you could say it's possible that they were in some way, there was some other explanation, but this is not simply generating hypotheses for the sake of generating hypotheses out of nowhere. The reason why we become interested in this particular topic is because of the statement of Srila Prabhupada, that he presents what someone else has said to him, and then he says about that, it may be. And then in order for us to then rule it out, we would now require it actually becomes impossible to rule it out at this point, simply from Anuman and Pratyaksha. There's no conclusive empirical evidence that will override this at this point. It will, from this point here, unless Srila Prabhupada himself rules it out, it will always remain as it may be. And when I read this, if we do take the theory of Srila Prabhupada speaking that his words carry weight and import, and we will use them as our indicators of reality and where to look and what to do, then for Srila Prabhupada to bring this up and to bring it up in this way at this point, it just to me it creates a duty on my part. Like I cannot now walk away from this and just say, oh well, that's just what he said, you know. I mean, you could, but you could take the position of being well, you know, it's above my pay grade, it's not even, you know, it's not anything I'm going to give my energy to. But unless Srila Prabhupada goes on to rule it out, it remains as may be. It may be. And so on the basis of that, I say that, and we'll go further to see the evidence that's commonly cited, you know, to refute this and to close the case, that Srila Prabhupada has opened the door to the possibility. And then if we take his words seriously and take him seriously, then it's like, okay, he opened the door on the possibility. Now we have to live with that and we have to deal with that. It becomes, in a sense, a duty.
I appreciate. I'm moved by what I experience is your mood of responsibility to Srila Prabhupada, that you're not going to walk away from it or say, oh, it's above my pay grade. I just can't even think about these things. You're not jumping to any conclusions in whatever direction, but you're saying, well, Srila Prabhupada said that. So that's weighty for you. It's weighty for you, and you're feeling a weight of responsibility to Srila Prabhupada and his mission. I appreciate that.
Thank you. You really got me. So then the Kaviraj, it's interesting to listen to the recording, actually, to hear the, you know, and these are all going to be interpretations, but just to hear the Kaviraj's ears prick up at this moment.
Yeah.
And the tone of the conversation changed. And the Kaviraj, he's speaking in Hindi, but you can hear it. He's like, what are you saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then Prabhupada says, someone says that poison has been given. And then the Kaviraj says, to whom? And Prabhupada says, to me. And then the Kaviraj says, who says? Now, here it says, Prabhupada, translation, this is the tension.
Mm. Okay.
Is this where he says, Ye Sab, friend Sab? Or is that in another conversation?
I think, you know, I could look, because I have the translation and the audio video from Truth Labs Forensic Services, and I don't recall anything that says this is the tension. There is
Neither.
Here where it says, yeah, all these, Prabhupada says all these friends. Is that right here, or is that a few lines down? I could look that up, but I'm not completely sure.
If you wouldn't mind bringing that up, that would be great.
Sure.
The other thing that's very interesting to me,
yeah,
is, let's have a look here and see if we can find this, is that in the transcripts, if we go to 1977 August,
yeah,
there are not a lot of conversations in here, but London at Bhaktivedanta Manor, for example, Srila Prabhupada is speaking with an Indian devotee, and you can see here that the Hindi is transcribed,
yeah,
transliterated, and then translated.
Interesting. Okay.
And this is August of 1977, so a couple of months before, and this is a conversation about Ayurvedic, how to find an Ayurvedic shop and to get Chuan Prash. And you said it was Zandu's. This is, yeah. So Prabhupada is asking whose Chuan Prash was that. So here they're speaking about medicine, Ayurvedic shop in India.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada's health. And the Hindi is translated. It's transcribed and translated. So there's a very high level of rigor in how the speech is treated. Whereas with this conversation, which is obviously significant and a significant point, we just get, am I on the right one here? Let me just check. Yeah. So if I find in this page the word poison, and here, rather than that, we just get a compression of the actual conversation, the dialogue, into a single line, Kaviraj, Hindi with Prabhupada. Prabhupada mentions poison. Now, I've been asking and trying to find out why was this not translated and transcribed in the same way? And who made the decision to editorialize it and put in this point Prabhupada mentions poison rather than approaching it in the same way that the August conversation was approached? But I have not been able to find any answer to that.
Okay.
The Prabhu who is in charge of this translation here for the Veda base, he said that they've never received any requests to deal with that conversation in a particular way.
Okay.
But it remains unclear to me why and how this happened.
Yeah, so you were right, Sitapati. Yeah, Prabhupada says, Yehi Sab, friend Sab, which translates as all these friends, in response to Kaviraj, who asks, who told that? And Prabhupada says, all these friends. That's at in the Truth Labs video audio, it's at about the 1 minute 50, 1 minute 55 mark.
Okay. So yeah, this in the original, if you listen to it, he says, Yay Sab, friend Sab. And it's being translated as this is the tension, which does not seem to me to be an accurate translation of that phrase.
That doesn't seem accurate. And for me, it kind of causes me some doubts about the other translations, considering I don't know Hindi, but that one doesn't seem right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this crucial line here, I don't think is there's any controversy about the translation of that. Bhakti Chiruswami asks, who has said that, Srila Prabhupada? And then Srila Prabhupada says, somebody said.
Yeah.
And then Tamal Krishna asked this question here, which is interesting to me. He says, Krishna Dasa. And so in listening to the conversation and how it occurs there, unless there's some voice activated recording, which is clipping, the silences out, it seems to me that Tamal Krishna is, unless he's speaking about something completely different, he is following the Hindi. Because he interjects with this Krishna Dasa, and it makes sense in here as if he were asking, is it Krishna Dasa who said this to you? But that would require him to be understanding and following the Hindi that's being spoken.
Okay, yeah. Either he's picking something up. My understanding is, I imagine he knew a few words of Hindi, but my understanding he was not in any way fluent in Hindi, because later in the conversation, for sure on November 9th, November 10th, he's asking Bhakti Chiruswami to translate the Hindi for him. So for me, it's clear he's not fluent in Hindi. Maybe he knows a few words. I don't know.
Then the Kaviraj asks, who will give you poison and why will he give you? Of course, this is where this hypothesis begins to develop into a theory. These are the kind of questions that need to be or are part of theories that are built on top of this.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of comments that people have left here. My Truth says, my understanding is that he is saying they said, but not that the words were spoken to him, just within his keen hearing.
Yeah. And for me, that comment, that kind of fits in with Prabhupada's comment, all these friends, right? Because he's hearing maybe caregivers, those around him, talking about poison. And so he's saying all these friends. Now, as far as the translation of this is the tension, I don't get that. But anyhow, so thanks for that. Because I'm not seeing the comments there. Maybe there's a way. I'm not so fluent with the technology here.
Let me see here. I can add it like this. Yeah.
Right. Just within his hearing. Okay. Thanks for that comment, my Truth. Yeah. Thanks for that. Okay.
Yeah. I would like to just point out that this is speculation. So what is incontrovertible is that Srila Prabhupada said the words that he said that we have on the recording. And then there's the translation, which we could differ in. What that means about, we can generate other theories about that as well, like including that Srila Prabhupada, and this is just to demonstrate that we can generate other theories. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada had direct knowledge from the super soul that this was happening. Yeah. And then he said this in order to, there's all kinds of stuff. But they all fall into the realm of not simply exactly what Srila Prabhupada said.
Well, again, Sitapati Prabhu, I appreciate your rigorousness. Yeah, here's what we know, and then here's the realm of conjecture, and there's a place to converse in the realm of conjecture. Let's just be clear: it's the realm of conjecture. It's not clearly what Prabhupada said. It's an important distinction.
Yeah, I really like to make that, because people like to run away with the entire, shape-shifting reptilian baby-eating lizards, posed as Prabhupada's disciples and then did this. And I'm like, hey, you're welcome to it. Like, you can entertain any kind of theory you want, but let's not collapse that with what Srila Prabhupada said and then either throw the entire thing out or refute that as the straw man, or try to give the strength of what Srila Prabhupada said to your idea about the, your specific theory about the lizards and the, I mean, that's a composition of various classes of evidence. And so, yeah, I just want to keep those very crystal clear.
I'm with you on that completely.
It might be useful, actually, to bring up the justice for Srila Prabhupada. Let's see if I can find that.
The audio video from Justice for Srila Prabhupada. I have that on my screen. Yeah, you did it. You did it. Okay. Yeah, you click there. Yeah, and you go. Yeah, right there. 22-minute audio clip.
Okay, and so you had the timestamp for the.
Sure, like at about 150, you'll see the all these frames.
There it is. Yeah, and so it has the transliteration. Okay, that doesn't really go bigger. Actually, I think I might even have. Let me just check if I've got it here. I do. It's taking a minute to come up. Okay, while that's coming up, we'll go back to here. So, yeah, the Yay Sab, friend Sab. Who told that? This is the tension does not. Who says this is the tension? That's a strange translation.
Strange.
Yay Sab, friend Sab. Even I understand that. And I don't speak Hindi.
Yeah.
Sab Lok Bol. Okay, so who said that? Srila Prabhupada. So this shows the natural wandering of the mind here, the movement of the mind. The Kaviraj says, who gave you poison and why would they give it? Tamal Krishna says, who said that? So Tamal Krishna's inquiry is about what is the source of this theory, whereas the Kaviraj is now into more kind of like who would do it and why would they do it?
Yeah, different direction, mind, as you say.
Yeah. And that obviously plays into people's theory. They generate theories about that. Srila Prabhupada says, I don't know, but it is said. And then anything else? Oh, actually, there is something that's perhaps of interest in here also, is that where the conversation goes after this, Srila Prabhupada says, astrology, I believe. And then Kaviraj says, here's not an astrologer, here's a priest speaking about Balaram Mishra. He does not know astrology, he knows Karma Kanda.
Okay.
And so Prabhupada brings this up. Bhakti Churu Swami says to Srila Prabhupada, you were saying that your duration of life is ending. Did any astrologer tell you this? And then he says to the Kaviraj, he had this in his astrological calculation. To Prabhupada, he says, but Shastriji is saying this is not true. And then to Kaviraj, he said, you said he will live for 10 more years. And Kaviraj says, yes, what now? Bhakti Churu Swami says, Shastriji says you will stay with us 10 more years, Srila Prabhupada. The Kaviraj says, you give up the consideration completely that there's no duration of life left in your astrological chart. Now, this is very different from the other translations that I've seen.
It's different from the other translations I've seen. I believe that in the Truth Labs video, they're not translating all of this, but for sure, at least because like we saw the one that this is the tension, that seems really different than not just the Truth Labs translation, but of the translations I've seen over the years, which is more like all these friends. Yeah.
That one there, yeah. So I saw another translation of this. So this becomes problematic. It's also challenging that there's no transcription, so that you can't even very easily, investigate for your own translation of this. The transliteration is missing.
Mm-hmm.
The Truth Labs has the transliteration, so it's possible to go from there. I don't know if it covers this part, though.
I don't think it does.
Okay. So then after this part here, they speak about the medicine you brought yesterday. Was there any triphala in it? So this is a question from Bhakti Charu to the Kaviraj. So now they speak a little bit about the medicine. And then the Kaviraj says, Maharaj, this is simply a disturbance to the mind. What else? So here, Srila Prabhupada has not really said anything else.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Srila Prabhupada says, I don't know, but it is said. There are indistinct whispered comments by devotees. Okay, we're going to get into that later, once we go through what Srila Prabhupada said. So Srila Prabhupada does not refute it. It becomes here categorized by the Kaviraj. We may take the case that the Kaviraj here is speaking about the here we are in the Hindi conversation with Prabhupada and Bhakti Charu here. And then the Kaviraj says, Maharaj, this is simply a disturbance to the mind. So that's the Kaviraj's characterization of this. We might take that as his commentary on what Srila Prabhupada has said. What are your thoughts on that?
We might. I'm not completely certain what this refers to in the Kaviraj's statement.
Uh-huh.
The Kaviraj uses the term this. I'm not concretely certain what he's referring to with the word this.
Okay, so let's go back here and have a look. So here Srila Prabhupada mentions astrology. You know astrology, I believe, and that kicks off this next little conversation here where Srila Prabhupada, he does not... Who told you that in your astrological chart you have a deadly period? Is this translated in the Truth Labs video?
No, it's not.
Section is not. Okay. And then Balaram Mishra says, my father says, whenever he became ill or felt some distress, he would chant this shloka. You've got so many dedicated disciples and servants with you. They're always praying to the Lord for you so much. So why do you worry? When the Lord responded to Draupadi's prayer, when he protected his devotee within the womb of his mother, so your devotees are praying not only here, but everywhere. I was in Calcutta. The devotees there are also praying for Prabhupada. So here, Balaram Mishra appears to be comforting Srila Prabhupada, or
yes.
This reminds me of when devotees say, how could you say such a thing that it could be possible? Like that Prahlad Maharaj protected his devotee. So that's a natural place for the mind to go as well.
Sure.
And then the Kaviraj says, Maharaj, this is simply a disturbance to the mind. What else?
Yeah. So I get the sense Kaviraj and Balaram Mishra, maybe they're trying to pacify Srila Prabhupada. Don't let this, that someone said poison, don't let that disturb your mind. That's my impression, subjective.
Yeah. And then the Kaviraj says, does a devotee like him become afflicted by disease, or a fruitive worker become afflicted? Actually, such a devotee does not feel it, but ordinary people become distressed by seeing it. This is very surprising. A common logical argument against the possibility of Srila Prabhupada being given poison is that how could, poison affect a devotee, a pure devotee of the Lord? But the Kaviraj is pointing to something else here. Like, how could disease affect a pure devotee of the Lord? Someone once said it's inglorious to say he was poisoned and died of that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, even going back to 1997, when I first heard about this, I was serving at that time as chairperson of the board of directors of this kind of Alachua. Devotees would come to me. And even this is before I thought it was a credible theory that Prabhupada was criminally poisoned. Devotees would come to me and say, Prabhupada's a pure devotee. He couldn't be poisoned. For me, that never, ever, ever seemed in any way logical or rational or shastric or shabda. Because like what's being said there, if we dissect it, Krishna and the pure devotee, they can co-create a disappearance pastime through crucifixion, through a bed of arrows. Are they allowed to do it through diabetes or a heart attack? Well, but for sure, they're just not capable to co-create a different disappearance pastime through poisoning. Obviously, the poison didn't kill Srila Prabhupada. That's why I'm careful to use terms, not like Prabhupada was poisoned, but at the same time, to me, it seems there's evidence to indicate that Srila Prabhupada was given poison with homicidal intent, just like the arrows didn't kill Bhishma Dev. Jesus could have chosen not to be crucified. So Prabhupada left in co-creation with Krishna in his own sweet will, transcendental pastime. But why could Krishna and Prabhupada not co-create a disappearance pastime through persons close to Srila Prabhupada giving him poison? I'm not saying, I'm just saying, like, that's not a logical argument. And even before, I was inclined to consider with seriousness that Prabhupada was given poison with homicidal intent. That never seemed logical or consistent with Vaishnava philosophy to me.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's inglorious and it's impossible for Srila Prabhupada to be given poison and for that to be the cause. But like diabetes, yes.
Yeah,
that's glorious and possible. It's like that doesn't work. Okay, and then finally, just to close the loop on that, we have Srila Prabhupada's statement where he says, someone says that I've been given poison, maybe. He doesn't say, well, that doesn't make that wouldn't do anything because I'm a pure devotee. So rule that out. He doesn't say that. He says maybe. And so the conversation goes in different directions with different people taking different tacks. The Kaviraj is interested in knowing who did it and why they would do it. Who would give you poison and why would he give it to you? Tamal Krishna is asking about the source of the information, the source of the hypothesis. Prabhupada says, I don't know, but it is said.
Yeah.
And then they go to consoling Srila Prabhupada in different ways. And the Kaviraj is the one who says that this is simply a disturbance to the mind. Okay, so shall we have a look at the next day's conversation? I believe is the one where so this is where the hypothesis comes from, and anyone who's in let's call it the pro-poison hypothesis, which is a broad spectrum from it may be, the possibility exists, perhaps deserves further or even necessitates further inquiry, all the way to the full-blown theories. They base it on this statement of Srila Prabhupada where he introduces the hypothesis and gives his evaluation that it may be. And then it's on the next day where the refutation, sits to the point where they even call the book Not That I'm Poisoned, which is a statement that's given in that day. So if we go to that day,
Mm.
November 9, 1977, it's the fourth room conversation of the day.
Okay.
We can see here we're locked into the same thing. Bhakti Charu Swami says he gave a medicine yesterday to control the stool, so we have to get it today. And then again, in here, we find we can find it in this page by looking for the word poison. And again, we find the same editorializing and lack of translation. So
Yeah.
with the latest version, we're going to find a translation, but not a transliteration.
Okay.
So, okay, we're approaching it here. They're talking about the medicine. Here we go. Someone gave him poison. Let me find it here. So, okay, so this conversation here is triggered by Bhavananda saying Prabhupada was complaining of mental distress this morning also.
Yeah.
And so this echoes what the Kaviraj said the day before. So it was the Kaviraj's assessment that Srila Prabhupada's statement constituted mental distress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Bhavananda says, I'm sorry, Prabhu?
Yeah, that was November 8th. Now here, Bhavananda Prabhu is saying there at the morning of November 9th, Prabhupada was again complaining of mental distress.
Yes. I just want to make the point that this is a characterization. It's a story about, it's not Prabhupada said X, it is Prabhupada, and then to say was complaining is not, it's a imputation of, it's not simply saying he said this. And then what he said, this is, again, in the realm of conjecture or analysis, Prabhupada did not say, well, Prabhupada might have said, I am feeling mental distress, but
All we have here is Bhavananda saying that Prabhupada was saying
was complaining of mental distress this morning also.
Statement from Bhavananda. We don't have a statement from Prabhupada here.
Yeah, exactly. Bhakti Charu says, Srila Prabhupada, it's to listen to the conversations and to be in the room listening to them, it's amazing.
Very, very impactful for me, for sure.
Yeah. Bhakti Charu Swami says, Srila Prabhupada, And then Bhakti Charu Swami, he says in Bengali, translation is given here, what happened? That mental distress in English. Prabhupada, Interesting. It says smile in the transcript.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I've seen in transcripts laughs because you can hear Srila Prabhupada laughing, but to put that he smiles in the transcript requires information that's not available in the audio. This would only be available if someone had video recorded it or from someone's memory of the event.
And the memory could be faulty.
Yeah. This is interesting. I wonder if this kind of metadata annotation of smile in the square brackets occurs anywhere else in the Veda base.
That's a good point. It's an interesting, maybe an important point.
Let me have a look. I mean, we can do it like this. We just go into here and we say smile. Whoop. Nope, it doesn't. It doesn't like that as a term, as a search term. Smile. Something went wrong, it said, when I tried to do that. Let's try it again. Let's try it like this. Okay, so it can do it. Let's try laughs. So you can see here that this metadata annotation is used to communicate that what's heard on the audio is laughter. And you can see that it's all throughout the transcripts.
Yeah.
However, this metadata annotation of smile, which is impossible to be communicated through the audio,
Right.
does not appear. So this is because, I mean, I spend a lot of time studying Srila Prabhupada's words, listening to it in the thing, and this is unprecedented.
Yeah.
I just want to, yeah.
It is interesting. Yeah.
I will ask about how that got in there. I'll see if I can get to the source of that.
I appreciate your thoroughness and your follow through and determination. I'll be glad to hear what you hear from the archives.
So the Kaviraj says, "Bole, bole, speak, speak." And then here again in the earlier one, that's the only one that's available now. This next one is coming out in May this year. Prabhupada says, "It is this that someone has given me poison." I think it says in the Justice for Srila Prabhupada, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's translated there as Prabhupada is saying the same thing, that someone has poisoned me. So the English is a bit different, but the meaning seems the same. The exact translation is a little different, but the meaning seems the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same thing, that someone has poisoned me.
Let me see if I can find it in this transcript.
8 minutes, 25 seconds.
8 minutes, 25 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's not very usable. It would be good to be able to have them, the transcript in just textual form.
That's true.
Okay, so Srila Prabhupada says, it's also just very interesting to me how it's like Hindi and then mentions the word poison for something that's such a big deal and such a controversy and just refuses to go away. The lack of transparency and just clarity around this thing to me is surprising. Yeah, and then the refutations of the even the possibility of the hypothesis and explaining that, well, Srila Prabhupada didn't really mean that, he meant something else, and these other things, they all rely on like stories about what Srila Prabhupada said rather than just direct analysis of the raw transcript.
Yeah, I appreciate that we're doing with you, leading a direct analysis of the raw transcript. Here in the Truth Labs translation, the Hindi is "Wahi bat je koi humko poison kiya," translated as the same thing, that someone has poisoned me. So in the Hindi, Prabhupada is using the English word poison. Prabhupada is using the English word poison.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But so I agree with you. It would be nice if the archives would to include that. That would be helpful.
Yeah, he doesn't just mention the word poison. He, in the previous one, he says, someone said that someone has given me poison, maybe, or it's possible. Yeah. Okay, the Kaviraj says, see, my point is maybe some demon has given you poison, you understand? And then Bhakti Churuswami is heard saying something and then someone gave him poison, which, this is my conjecture, sounds to me that he's translating for others in the room.
He's translating Prabhupada's words for others in the room. That is my understanding.
And then the Kaviraj in Hindi gives a long explanation about a Shankaracharya disciple being poisoned.
Yeah.
It actually says that it's Shankaracharya himself in the translation. Someone gave him poison. He was given crushed glass bottle, it crushed into a powder and mixed it into the food.
Right. Well, one thing that it seems clear, whether we're talking about Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Churuswami, the Kaviraj, they're talking about murder by poison. they're not talking about just like the possible side effects of some medicine, but they're talking about a murder of a Shankaracharya or Shankaracharya guru or something. So, and they're talking about a Raksha, a demon could have done it. So it seems that in the conversation, they are talking about the possibility of murder by poison.
Yeah. So the argument, because I went back and read the Not That I'm Poisoned booklet, and in there, particularly in the introduction, this is all nothing to see here. Mm-hmm. Prabhupada was talking about, a possible negative side effect of a medicine.
Yeah.
But when you actually go and read it yourself, you're like, you can say that, but I don't think that that's the strongest, directest interpretation of what he's saying. To me, that seems to be like that requires an additional leaps rather than just like straight what he's saying. Somebody said that someone gave me poison. It may be, it's possible.
Yeah.
Interesting here also is that in the existing transcript, Tamal Krishna says Prabhupada was thinking that someone had poisoned him. And then Adri Dharan in the current one says yes, but it's changed to Bhakti Charu in the updated version.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, like the translations I saw going back to the 1990s was Adri Dharan. Even in the more recent translations, including Truth Labs, I see it as Bhakti Charu. So my understanding is the conclusion seems to be that it's Bhakti Charu Swami, not Adri Dharan. But in the earlier translations, I saw Adri Dharan's name also. Yeah.
Okay. It would make sense that it was Bhakti Charu because Bhakti Charu is translating, says someone gave him poison here, and then Tamal Krishna says Prabhupada was thinking that someone had poisoned him. It would make sense for the person who was speaking to say yes. One thing we can infer from this is that Adri Dharan was present in the room at the time.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yes, I will mention the Truth Labs translation Truth Labs has Bhakti Charu saying yeah, here it's yes. Yeah, probably an important difference. But it has Bhakti Charu saying that yes, not Adri Dharan. So it seems likely Adri Dharan was in the room. Yeah.
Okay. So then the Kaviraj says this. Since he says so, there has to be some truth in it. There is no doubt about it. Right. So it's pretty clear to me that they are discussing the hypothesis that Srila Prabhupada was given poison that he introduced the day before. He said that it's possible.
Yeah. They're clearly talking about Prabhupada talking about being poisoned, murder by poison. That's what they're talking about. For me, it's clear that's what they're talking about. That in itself doesn't prove that Prabhupada was criminally poisoned, but that's what they're talking about.
They're not talking about side effects from a medicine that he was given.
Right.
Although they may be without knowing it, but their conversation, like the thing that Prabhupada may have been given a medicine that had a side effect that gave him the effects of being poisoned. Someone said that he looked like he was poisoned. He repeated it, and now they're talking about it. But that would be conjecture. But behind that conversation, there could be many causes, but it's undeniable that this is what they're talking about. That they're seriously considering the hypothesis that it was poison with intent.
Poison with intent. Yeah, they're mentioning about Rakshasas and demons, and Shankaracharya guru was killed. And as we go on, they'll be talking just a few lines later. They're talking about a lawyer who murdered his wife by poison. They're talking about murder by poison as it relates to the possibility that that's what Prabhupada was being murdered by poison. That seems to be what they're talking about. Yeah.
The room erupts at that moment. If you're listening to the recording, you can hear it. It's like, boom, someone just dropped a bomb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, nobody dropped a bomb. That's a metaphor. It's a metaphor there. I'm not literally, but the room, people all begin speaking at once. Srila Prabhupada Shastri Ji says that there must be some truth to it if you say that. So here you can see that the response, the immediate response of the disciples in the room is to that Srila Prabhupada has put forward the hypothesis, and he said that it's possible. And then further, the Kaviraj has stated that since Srila Prabhupada has said it, there must be some truth to it. And then Tamal Krishna immediately goes to, so who is it that is poisoned? He doesn't go to, well, that's not possible, Srila Prabhupada, because Prahlad Maharaj was protected by. So again, the kind of modern ruling out the possibility categorically is not supported by the actual conversation.
Yeah, it seems that way, just like what you're saying. But even if you look at the Tamal Krishna Goswami, he's not really asking whether it's really possible. It's in one sense, his wording would indicate he's kind of in, okay, it's you're being poisoned. It's not a question of whether it happens, it's a question of who did it. That's what he's asking.
He goes straight to that. Yeah. I guess this is kind of the conjecture about Tamal Krishna Swami's line of thinking behind his statements in this conversation is what leads people to place him as one of the suspects. This is my conjecture about that.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
Understanding. Yeah.
Okay. So, here it says, so the Hindi with Bhakti Charu and Prabhupada asking about poison and discussing Makara Dvaja. So this is where they were actually talking about a negative side effect of medicine comes from. So the Kaviraj says the strongest poison is mercury. The Surupa Guha case in Calcutta, did you read it, Swamiji? And then Kaviraj says her husband gave her. He gave her as a medicine dose for immediate relief, which we call Ras Kapoor. There was mercury in Makara Dvaja. No, it has to be given with. So here he's talking about this murder case in Calcutta where a husband murdered his wife by giving her a medicine and mixing mercury in it. Yes?
Yeah. So again,
and then
they're talking about murder by poison. They're not
specifically by mixing it with medicine.
Yeah.
And so they're not talking about a side effect from a medicine like the Makara Dvaja. In here, it tells you that they're asking about poison and discussing Makara Dvaja. So that's the kind of editorializing that would play very well with the attempt to dismiss this entire idea with they were talking about the side effect of a medicine. But they're making it very clear that the Kaviraj says, no, it has to be given with. So the mercury poisoning in that case, which was mercury administered alongside the Makara Dvaja, it wasn't a component and it wasn't a side effect of the medicine. It was homicidal poisoning by administering medicine and administering poison alongside the medicine in that case.
That's clear what they're stating. Yeah, that's the possibility, not a side effect. No, deliberately mixing poison with homicidal intent with a medicine called Makara Dvaja. Yeah, that's what they're talking about. That's what it seems. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But when you view it in the English only part here, a female devotee whose name we don't know says, what did he say? Bhakti Charu Swami says, he said that it's quite possible that mercury, it's a kind of poison. Tamal Krishna says that Makara Dvaja. No, he's not saying, he's saying not that. And then this part here, I would imagine is where this idea that they were talking about the side effect of a medicine is derived. Makara Dvaja is like nectar, but it's suitable for him. That's a different thing. Actually, it is poison for everyone. Now they go, it's a quite a mixed conversation here because it's taking place in two languages and not everybody speaks the same language.
Different threads, both interrelated and also distinct. So, and that's the way conversations generally work.
Yes. So because they've mentioned the medicine here, Bhavananda is asking what medicine was he taking before that. And then Bhakti Charu answers both questions. He says he was taking Yogendra Ras, and no, he was referring to a big murder case in Calcutta. The husband poisoned the wife.
Yeah.
So I think the refutation of this, that they were just talking about the side effects of the medicine and they were not discussing homicidal administration of poison, is not supported by the actual conversation itself.
I'm in agreement with that. Yeah.
I mean, neither are the conversation doesn't support anything further than that they're hypothesizing and they're open the hypothesis. No one has closed the door on this hypothesis.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Srila Prabhupada is the one who introduced this hypothesis. He is the one who on 2 separate days has started this conversation.
Yeah, I regard that as an important point, because sometimes in different writings here and there, I see like, yeah, this whole thing about the poison, it was just started by some angry 12-year-old guru Kuli who was in Vrindavan. No, the rumors that Prabhupada was poisoned were started by Srila Prabhupada. I say that with some irony. Obviously, Prabhupada isn't interested in tawdry rumors, but just some rumor started by some guru. I've heard different things. No, it's Srila Prabhupada who started these conversations about murder by poison.
Yeah, it's pretty clear to me that the hypothesis that Srila Prabhupada was given poison, and when I say the hypothesis that he was given poison, that means that Srila Prabhupada may have been given poison. So the hypothesis that Srila Prabhupada was given poison and that is possible comes to us from Srila Prabhupada himself.
Yeah.
And although he does it by stating that someone said this, to then give some explanation, as I've heard done, that, well, someone else was hypothesizing that and they were wrong and Srila Prabhupada heard it and then he said it. It's like, that may be the case, but that's a conjecture.
Yeah.
That's what we have is that Srila Prabhupada is saying it may be possible.
Yes.
And then here in this next part is where we begin to see this, whoever the Lord protects, just like Prahlad Maharaj was also.
Yeah.
This idea. And then Tamal Krishna says, no poison is strong enough to stop the Harinam, Srila Prabhupada. Yes, before Harinam, Meera was given so much poison. By a single drop of poison, a man can die. She drank it all. Just see. If food is offered to the Supreme Lord, it transforms into nectar. This is my conviction. Devotee Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj also. So here again, it's not Srila Prabhupada who says this.
Mm-hmm.
It's people who say it to Srila Prabhupada. And now this is in the realm of conjecture about it. We can state what they stated, but then what that means or why they said it or anything like that comes into the realm now of interpretation. But Srila Prabhupada himself never says these things.
Mm-hmm.
He says that it's that someone may have given him poison. Well, he says that someone said that someone gave me poison. It's possible. And then others, after becoming disturbed by it, then kind of like they treat it as mental distress on Srila Prabhupada's part.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's he's experiencing mental distress. Don't worry, Srila Prabhupada. Nothing like that can harm you. You'll be fine. Kind of that's their approach to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that may or may not be accurate. It may or may not be appropriate. And I can see why devotees in the contemporary era go to the same place. It seems that even devotees at that time were going to that place, like, oh, both are there, like, oh, Shankaracharya, so there's precedence for it.
Yeah.
And then there's also this, oh, well, it couldn't affect you. Don't worry about it. It's not something that we really need to be concerned with. Shall we do some more kirtan?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one which I don't see it here, but Srila Prabhupada, where Tamal Krishna Swami says, we that's why only our men can cook for you.
Mm.
Do you know which conversation that one is in?
I could find it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll look here.
Okay.
Okay. Second here. Yeah, in the Truth Labs conversation, it's November 9th, 4 minutes, 54 seconds in the Truth Labs conversation.
Okay, so it's on November 9. So November. It sounds like it's not an R4 in that case.
Mm.
Let's have a look.
Yeah, well, there's different.
Yeah, the splicing of things into pieces and then the reassembly into like a mega mix, like a greatest, like here's all the, not that I'm poisoned. Actually, that's how we find it. Yeah, we search in here for not that I am poisoned.
Okay.
It's in that conversation.
Yeah.
Here we go. So this is the big refutation here of the theory. This is what the not that I'm poisoned relies on. It's 771109R1. So it's the first of the conversations on that day. Let me pull that one up. 771109R1. Okay, good. Left half. Okay, so this is on the same day as the R4, where they were saying, Bhavananda says, you had mental distress, Srila Prabhupada, but presumably this happens earlier in the day.
Well, my understanding is it definitely, based on all the recordings, transcripts, it happens earlier. It happens before the mental distress, the Shankaracharya, the Prahlad Maharaj, the lawyer who murdered his wife by poison. It happens earlier in the day than those conversations, yes.
It would also be interesting for us to know who is in the room when these conversations take place, but that data is not available. So in this conversation, it begins by Tamal Krishna stating, Srila Prabhupada, you said before that it is said that you were poisoned. So he's referring back to the conversation, presumably of the day before, where Srila Prabhupada introduced this hypothesis.
Yeah, right. That's what it seems to me. He's referring back to November 8th when Prabhupada introduced the hypothesis. That's my understanding.
We have no earlier recordings from this day where he states that it could have happened, but we don't have access to that. And then Srila Prabhupada says, no, these kind of symptoms are seen when a man is poisoned. He said like that, not that I'm poisoned. So this is the big, killing blow quote for those who wish to dismiss the hypothesis. So their argument is that this closes the hypothesis by Srila Prabhupada saying definitively, not that I am poisoned. What are your thoughts on that, Prabhu?
What are my thoughts?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, well, I guess it would be interesting because after this conversation, Bhakti True Swami is saying that Prabhupada is experiencing mental distress. Bhavananda is asking about the mental distress. It becomes very clear that the mental distress, or what they perceive as Prabhupada's mental distress, Prabhupada saying the same thing, that someone has given me poison. I'm loosely translating the Hindi there. And then Bhakti True Swami is clearly acknowledging Prabhupada thinks that someone's poisoned him. And Tamal Krishna Goswami says, sheesh. And the Kaviraj says, yes, some demon could have done it. It could have been a Rakshasa. So after this conversation, if like this closes it, so then everyone's clear. Whoa, yeah, there's no poisoning happening. Then how come after this conversation, they're all in anxiety that Prabhupada's experiencing mental distress because he thinks or knows that someone's poisoning him? How come after this conversation they're speaking about poison was given with murderous intent to Prahlad and the lawyer who killed his wife with poison? If they're all clear that, whoa, what a relief! How come all that conversation comes after this statement from Srila Prabhupada?
It's a very good point. The other thing I see here is that Tamal Krishna's question is, although it's an ambiguous question, because the question is not that Srila Prabhupada, have you been given poison? It's a question that says, you said before that it is said that you were poisoned.
Mm-hmm.
So his question is actually can be understood as about two things. It's a question about the underlying objective reality indicated by speaking, but it's also a question about speaking itself. It's a question about Srila Prabhupada's previous statement.
Yeah.
Did you say that you were poisoned? And Prabhupada says, no, I didn't say that I'm poisoned, because he didn't. He said, someone said that I've been given poison, maybe. He did not make the strong positive claim that I'm poisoned.
Mm-hmm.
He advanced the hypothesis and said that it's possible. So Prabhupada here is not ruling out the possibility with the statement. He's clarifying that he did not make the strong positive claim, not that I'm poisoned. He advanced the hypothesis with a possibility. That's my reading of the statement here. When people try to advance it and say that Prabhupada's making a strong positive claim that he was not poisoned, this seems to me to be more a clarification. He's making the strong positive claim that he did not make the strong positive claim that he was poisoned. He's not making the strong positive claim that he was not poisoned, which is a very subtle distinction, but it's important.
Yeah, your reading of it to me seems reasonable completely. Also, I'll just share something for our consideration here. Srila Prabhupada often he would speak in terms of lakshana. He would speak like lakshana means characteristics or symptoms. Lakshana. So you can know a Brahmin by lakshana. You can know a Sudra by their characteristics, not just like how they were born or a rubber stamp. You know a devotee by their symptoms, by their characteristics. You know a demon by their characteristics. I think lakshana he translates as symptoms. Symptoms are characteristics. Often symptoms. So he's kind of saying like, there's someone said that I have the symptoms, the lakshana of someone who was poisoned. And if we look at the way Prabhupada uses that term throughout the totality of his teachings, often says you can know the truth, the essence of something by symptoms. I just want to put that out there for our consideration. Definitely
his symptoms. Well, Srila Prabhupada is indicating that the symptoms that he has are consistent with that. He's not ruling it out. And this statement, not that I'm poisoned, when that's used to close the hypothesis and say that Srila Prabhupada himself dismissed it, I don't think that is accurately representing this conversation, how it went. That's my conclusion from looking at this.
I'm in agreement with you.
And then I also find this next part very interesting. Tamal Krishna says, yeah, did anyone tell you that? Now, this is my dramatic reading. Let me read it without drama. Yeah, did anyone tell you that, or you just know it from before? And then Srila Prabhupada says, I read something. So it's interesting to me that Srila Prabhupada states that someone said it to him, but when he's questioned about who said it, he's like, yes, sab, friend sab, like, it's, and then here, when directly questioned by Tamal Krishna, did someone tell you that, or you just know it from before? Prabhupada says, I read something. So he's going from someone said this to someone said that I had the symptoms to I read it somewhere.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
My conjecture, for whatever
Yeah.
it's worth, uh, Srila Prabhupada is being discreet. He's being consciously discreet about what he's revealing and how he's revealing it and to whom he's revealing it and not. He's simply being discreet and carefully choosing his words and language at each juncture here.
It does seem that way to me, because otherwise he's simply being contradictory. He's contradicting himself, which can be resolved in that he's speaking around something that he does not want to reveal what the thing is. The person who told him might have been wrong, and the whole hypothesis could be wrong, but I think it's let me take that out. It is an overstatement of the case to say that Srila Prabhupada ruled it out, or that anyone who entertains this hypothesis or investigates it further is in some way a deviant, totally off the reservation. Those kind of arguments, when they're used to shut down this entire conversation, I find them to be overstated, and there's a pattern. There seems to be a pattern around this. This part here I find very interesting also. Tamal Krishna says, I see. That's why actually we cannot allow anyone else to cook for you. Prabhupada, that is good. Tamal Krishna, Jayapataka Maharaj was telling that one Acharya, Shankaracharya, of the Shankaracharya line, this was a while ago, he was poisoned to death. Since that time, none of the acharyas or the gurus of the Shankaracharya line will ever take any food cooked except by their own men. And then Srila Prabhupada says this.
Yeah.
My Guru Maharaj also. Now, I haven't really heard a lot of people comment on this, but this jumped out at me because someone, when I was talking to him about the subject, he said, man, nobody's talking about the real conspiracy that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was poisoned. So Srila Prabhupada here is saying, what is he saying? My Guru Maharaj also what? My Guru Maharaj also would not take any food cooked except by his own men in order to avoid being poisoned. It's like, or my Guru Maharaj was also given poison. Like, it's unclear exactly what he's saying. But one thing that does seem clear to me here is that the idea that the Acharya could be given poison and it's categorically ruled out is here again ruled out, because Srila Prabhupada seems to be stating that my Guru Maharaj either took measures to avoid being poisoned or, was poisoned. It's unclear exactly what he's saying, but it's in that realm.
Right. Srila Prabhupada's clearly not saying it's not possible for a great Acharya to be poisoned. He's clearly not saying that. And of course, we understand that that's all on the foundation that it's transcendental pastime. Bhishma Dev wasn't killed by the arrows; he left at his own sweet will. But Krishna and the great acharyas can create a departure pastime through poisoning. Prabhupada's not ruling that out. Philosophically, it's completely possible within the Vaishnav, Vaishnav thought.
So this is the totality for me of what I've read in the conversations that examines that crucial initial point, the hypothesis that Srila Prabhupada was given poison, the fact that it was generated or given to us by Srila Prabhupada himself. Although he says that someone said it, he doesn't give any more information to us in 2025 than that, but his words come to us over the 47 intervening years and arrive to us. And he says, someone said that someone gave me poison, it's possible. And then he does not rule the hypothesis out. He makes a clarifying statement that I didn't say that I'm poisoned, not that I'm poisoned, but I have the symptoms of one who was poisoned.
Yeah.
And so again, he's not ruling out that he has been poisoned. There's no smoking gun in this where Prabhupada says, I definitely 100% have been poisoned. There's no smoking gun in this that I can see, but neither is there any justification for ruling the hypothesis out on the basis of Srila Prabhupada's own words. And the arguments that I've heard that attempt to do that, to me, appear to be overstating the case. And so my conclusion from reading this is that the hypothesis comes from Srila Prabhupada. His evaluation of it is that it is possible, and then we're left to deal with that now.
Well, again, I appreciate your rigorous, threadbare, to use a word that Prabhupada used, threadbare examination of the specifics here, and I'm in agreement with your hypothesis, and that the hypothesis is not ruled out, and that's going back to 1997 when I thought, oh, this must be no validity. One of the first things I noticed is, because I was on the GBC conference and I was late. I was in all sorts of international meetings and bodies, and I noticed that any attempt, my perception, any attempt to discuss this was shut down by the ISKCON GBC, and they came out with there's no evidence, and that I've been in communication with GBC Executive Committee. They stand strong. There is no evidence whatsoever that Srila Prabhupada was given poison. None. It's ridiculous. It's pseudoscience. It's just ghastly. So they're just just no opening to the possibility that the hypothesis might have credibility. And so that in itself for me, that was like, oh well. Seems like there's something to hide here. It doesn't seem to be like, okay, let's just let's be open-minded and see where the facts lead us.
Yeah, there may be no or insufficient credible evidence to support a specific theory. Mm-hmm. However, given the standard that we set at the beginning of this of our conversation of the various pramans, the Shabda Praman, Pratyaksha, and Anuman, if we take the statements of Srila Prabhupada as Shabda Praman of the category of Smriti, then it is forever the case that Srila Prabhupada may have been given poison.
It's there. I like how you term that. Yeah, that it can't be ruled out. Not just that, like, oh, maybe it was some aliens on Andromeda, can't be ruled out. But in terms of there's reasonable cause to suspect that that Prabhupada was giving that hypothesis that he was being criminally poisoned, as you say, not that Prabhupada gave 100% proof through the Shabda Praman that he is. At the same time, he the Smriti Praman that he is, he clearly establishes that it's credible to consider that it could have happened.
Yeah. So before we move into examining, the specifics of the investigation and the theories, I just like to make this point that I can understand that opening the door to the lizards, the reptilian shape-shifting, Pralambasura disciple who, of this specific one or that one, and then now we're going to just go completely, great, my mind could now go wild with that might be fun and entertaining and everything, but it's not supported to the same level. And I can understand why, from a managerial perspective, you would want to manage that. Mm-hmm. And so that could drive people to do things like, look, let's bury the support for the hypothesis and just shut the whole thing down.
Yeah.
I can understand that. And that would be, there is an obvious cover-up. I'm just going to state that straight out. I make the assertion there's an obvious cover-up of the initial hypothesis and an attempt to shut down the entire conversation at the very beginning. Mm. And that is consistent with two things. It could be consistent with a criminal conspiracy to administer poison with homicidal intent.
Yeah.
And it is also consistent with pragmatic managerial, look, we're not going to be able to, it's done. If it ever did happen, we don't know. Prabhupada himself didn't say it did. He only said that it might have. Why did he have to, and this is in the back of the mind, why did Prabhupada have to go and throw such a spanner in at the last minute? He was,
as they were saying, he was experiencing some mental distress. He threw out a couple of statements that got recorded, and now we have to deal with it, and everyone's going crazy. The easiest thing is to just shut it down.
Yeah,
Could be.
For the good of the movement and the peace of mind of the devotees, let's not cause disturbance endless. So let's just shut it down to not cause disturbance and carry on with the Sankirtan movement.
Yeah, and a lot of devotees will take that approach on that basis. So it could be that. I'll say a couple of things about that before we go to look at the criminal conspiracy part. The first is that this is a consequentialist argument. It's based on the projected, like, oh, we'll get the right outcomes that we want, so we'll take an action that is not strictly sattvic. It's not satyam. It's not simply telling the truth and distinguishing what it is as it is. That's problematic, just from a principle perspective. You know, we have to deal with the uncomfortable.
Yeah, from an ethical principle point of view, that's problematic.
And then it becomes secondarily problematic because Prabhupada didn't rule it out. So he may have been given poison with with intent, or he may have been given poison with intent, and buying into the let's just cover it up, you know, for the good of the movement, is participating in the conspiracy after the fact.
It's being I believe it's being an accessory after the fact.
And I'm unwilling to do that.
I appreciate you for that. I truly
do. And so I think we need to bring rigor to everything that comes after that, but the hypothesis will always be open. Prabhupada said that Caesar's wife must be above reproach, above suspicion. And when I look at this, I'm just like, man, Srila Prabhupada really threw a spanner into the machine there. And like in my theory of Srila Prabhupada speaking, I'm like, this is deliberate. Srila Prabhupada is speaking to me over an intervening 47 years, and he just dropped that in there. He's just like on the way out, he's like, and this. You know, when Venkat Bhatta was saying, oh, how could you entertain the idea? What does that say about the people, the disciples that Srila Prabhupada had around him? I'm like, what did Srila Prabhupada just tell me about the people that he had around him, or his evaluation or his assessment? And then to introduce this next part of like looking at the specifics, because I know you've gone into detail of looking at, you know, specific theories, and I'm going to ask you to advance what you consider to be the most, you know, credible line of, you know, reasoning at the moment, supported by Anuman and Pratyaksha.
Yeah.
Of course, with the caveat that it's never going to be, even if we secured a conviction of someone in the court and they went away for it and had gone to Wikipedia, it could be reversed in the future. So
yeah, it's true. It's true. It's subject to human defects and the fluctuations of material energy, court decisions, like that.
One thing I'll say about scientific theories to introduce this part is that scientific theories are not simply hypotheses that are validated with, you know, experiments that give you like falsifiable predictions based on the hypothesis and then validated with empirical data. Scientific theories also enable you to make predictions, and they can be evaluated on their usefulness. They are evaluated on the usefulness. Like Newton's theory of gravity is useful in a classical context, but then, you know, if you go to the quantum level, or if you're, you know, dealing with extremely large, you need another theory there, but it's, as an approximation, it's useful. One of the things I often think about, my son said, Prahlad said, if someone had the means and the motive, you can't rule it out. The other thing I think is a heuristic is, if you were making investments or betting on the future, if you just use like, I'm not committed to it, but I'm just going to hypothesize and use a theory that someone gave Prabhupada poison with criminal intent, and so there's some kind of agenda like that operating in the society, you would have and placed your money as investments or bets on that basis, you would do better in performing against like the outcomes in the intervening 47 years than if you had to adopt this other way of doing it, which is I have to have 15 different explanations for why this and why that and why this and why that. And actually it's very complicated, Prabhu, and it's kind of like the meme, where it's like, hey, I'm not saying that Prabhupada was poisoned, but if I just make my investments and bet as if he was, it works out to approximate what we see. And so that's unfortunate coincidence.
Right. That conclusion or that stance, it has good explanatory value. If we just wanted to try to explain some things, it doesn't prove anything, but I very much appreciate your heuristic approach. It's practical.
And then, of course, the counter argument to that is that people have been damaged by what happened, and so they've generated this theory, but it's disproved by the fact that the hypothesis comes from Prabhupada.
Hypothesis comes from Prabhupada. As far as the consequentialist approach and the consequences we are scared of, I've mostly seen exactly the opposite. I just want to share that, and this doesn't prove anything, but like I've seen so many, including or especially the past 6 months. 6 months. Like I can think of some, like he's some who they were like, exposed to Krishna consciousness at maybe for years and maybe dabbling, but they had doubts in this, and actually I'm thinking of one young gentleman, and he has shared with me over the years he had stuff with Srila Prabhupada, and he was trying different spiritual things and Krishna consciousness and that. And then when he read about the what I consider to be strong evidence, especially from Srila Prabhupada, that Prabhupada was poisoned by those close to him in 1977. It was liberating for him. And there's many over the years and decades, when they get that, it's liberating for them. And this young gentleman, he got he understood that all his toxic reservations, doubts about Prabhupada, they weren't about Prabhupada. They were about the institutions trying to cover up this most heinous crime. And now he's joyful and chanting and offering bhoga and consuming prasad and into kirtan and bhakti yoga. So I've seen plenty of amazingly encouraging consequences for when spirit souls having a human experience get this this information. In February 1977, Srila Prabhupada, it's recorded, it's transcribed, recorded in I think it was in Bombay, definitely in India. And Prabhupada, he said Christianity was kind of small and insignificant until the reality of the crucifixion of Jesus was revealed. So that might be February 77, might be just about when the poisoning started. And so Prabhupada was saying that Christianity grew when the disappearance pastime got revealed. So I think when the realities of my hope, wish, and actually, I'm inspired by the possibilities as the realities of Prabhupada's disappearance pastime get revealed. That's going to be huge waves and tidal waves of momentum for Prabhupada's Sankirtan movement. That's my point of
view. Yes. We don't know what the consequences will be. It's like, do your duty without attachment to the result. You have the right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the results. Never be attached to the outcome, and never be attached to not doing your duty.
Hare Krishna. Jai Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Yeah, so let's do it. And keeping in the back of our mind also as a context, Maharaj Parikshit's statement in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, where he says, one who identifies the perpetrator of irreligious acts shares in his destination.
Yeah. So
we understand that ultimately, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiyadiya Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. The Lord is the cause of everything. And Prakriti Kriyamanani Gunai Karmani Sarvashaha Ahankara Vimudhatma.
Kartahamiti Manyate.
Yeah. Everything is being carried on by the Lord's will, and it's simply Leela, and we just have our duty to perform. And if you see Srila Prabhupada's hypothesis and you're like, I'm not just going to walk past this, and then you do something about it with integrity, precision, and with the pure motivation of serving Srila Prabhupada's movement, what's the investigation so far, and how the theory is looking, Prabhu?
Yeah, I'm inspired by your attitude, fully founded in Bhagavad Gita. You or I, we're not trying to get anyone or point the finger at the perpetrator. We're looking at the facts, and I'm endeavoring to fulfill my service to Srila Prabhupada, to support that the realities of his disappearance past time are revealed. And I'm not making any comments about what someone's inner. This one's a demon. Maybe it's all. Even if Prabhupada was poisoned, maybe those who administered poison, maybe they're like giant Vijay from the spiritual world. I don't want to be ridiculous here. I'm saying I'm truly not making any comments about what's in someone's heart like that. I'm just looking at the facts, like we just did, in our first 2 hours here. Here's what Prabhupada said, and let's hear from Prabhupada. And endeavoring to do my service with non-attachment to the results. Maybe the consequences of what gets revealed will be horrific or amazing. I'm doing my service, and this conversation is part of the service that I'm grateful for. So you asked about the Anumana, evidence.
Yeah, and the Pratyaksha. I mean, how practical is it to try to look into this? We're 47 years away from the scene of the crime, if it were a crime scene. How is such an investigation conducted forensically at this distance?
Okay, I'll speak to that. And I know I don't need to share this with you, but just for listeners, we understand Anumana and Pratyaksha. They're subject to the human defects. And so I appreciate it. We delved into the Shabda Brahman, Srila Prabhupada's words, and we might have different responses or interpretations of Prabhupada's Shabda. So how? Well, one thing is, it's 47 years ago. At the same time, it's now. Like you said, I was very moved, Sitapati Prabhu, when you shared that like you're in the room in Vrindavan with Prabhupada, November 77. That's impactful. Okay, that's impactful. So there's incredibly evolved science of audio forensics, analyzing audio, that I imagine that those close to Prabhupada in November 1977 couldn't have even conceived about what the audio forensics would be half a century later. I'm not saying that Prabhupada couldn't conceive, okay, but those around him, I don't believe they could conceive. And so they analyze the conversations, and they come up with that through voice print analysis and analyzing the whispers, they come up with some who were close to Srila Prabhupada. Names are given, are in the background of these conversations, November 8th, 9th, and 10th, 1977 in Vrindavan, in the background, saying things like the poison's going down, and is the poison in the milk, and we know he's trying to trap us. So I'm just saying, like, as far as the modern empirical science based on philosophies like logical empiricism, Anumana in Vedic terms, that's what it's saying as far as the audio forensics. We can each put as much trust in that as we choose, but that's what the top audio forensic Anumana approach is concluding. When I say the top, I mean, this is like the top technology in the world, or for sure 100%, by far, the top Anumana audio forensic technology that's been applied to these conversations. And it may be like, it's as sophisticated as it gets. And again, if whoever wants to wants to get a different audio forensic team of professionals at that internationally in top level, let them apply it. So Truth Labs Forensics, I'll mention the founder and director of Truth Labs, Dr. Ezra Gandhi. Just
I'd like to push back on that, Prabhu.
Sure.
The first thing is that for me, I can't hear the claimed statements in the audio myself.
Yeah.
So it's not replicable for me as a scientific experiment. I also can't see those. What are those things? Those magic eye books? I can't see those either.
Okay.
Never been able to see one. The other thing that seems kind of strange to me is like, why would they literally be like mixing the poison and saying that kind of stuff in the background, while they're talking, like the poison's going down, put the poison in the milk. Why would they be saying that like in the room when they're talking about the poison?
It's not making sense to you that they would be talking like that.
Yeah, it seems to me that the correlation of the time and the topic would correlate with like, I'm hearing Prabhupada talking about poison, and so I hear these whispers and then I interpret them as talking about poison as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the idea that there's a criminal conspiracy and they're like literally whispering about what they're doing, it's like if you wanted to ever get busted for doing it, like you'd talk about it while people are thinking about it. If you can see what I'm saying, that seems to me, yeah.
It would seem like if they were actually involved in trying to do a murder by poison, that would be like so foolish to be talking about it while they're doing it right there in the room.
And it's like, it's not like we're going to go and analyze all the indistinct whispers everywhere, but like specifically analyzing the indistinct whispers during the conversation about poisoning. So it's kind of like, I mean, are they talking about it in other conversations? Has there been like more of this? And this is just a thought coming to me now. Has there been analysis of other indistinct whispers in conversations in Vrindavan in 1977 in the last months? Outside of those conversations?
Well, I know that Truth Labs analyzed many conversations, not just from that time period, not just these 23 minutes, but as far as how much they analyze. I mean, I know the Truth Lab spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on this. So what you or whoever might give, well, I don't give that any credence, or someone say, well, then, I take that seriously. But you asked me, so here's what it is. And
yeah, sure.
Because I don't give that much weight. I respect that. I'm just, you asked me, here's the forensic evidence.
Yeah. The jury, for me personally, the jury is out on that one. I'm not saying that it's not, that it's like, you read refutations of it that say, oh, the poison whisperers, here they come with like, reading the tea leaves kind of thing. It's like, maybe not. I don't know. Like, my senses are faulty and imperfect, and that could be the case, and it may not be the case. That's where I'm standing on that one at the moment, just to add my personal commentary to it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thanks for sharing.
There's another couple of things, actually. We didn't go into the conversations to look at them, but there are two reported other events that happened at the end that fit into, if you're building, like, just to be clear, we're now in front of the corkboard, going, it's all connected, with the string and the crazy hair, and like, just to be straight up, we're theorizing about the thing now. Srila Prabhupada wanted to go on Parikram.
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't take him on Parikram. That was one thing. And then the other thing is that apparently, and now I've seen Srila Prabhupada asking to go on Parikram and the discussion about it, and then them being like, no, we don't want you to go. But the other one is Srila Prabhupada asking for all his disciples to be called to come to Vrindavan.
Yeah. Now
that one, I haven't seen a conversation transcript. Are you across where that claim comes from and what the details are?
Yeah, I've heard and read a lot about that. And I know there's what I consider there's a lot of personal testimonial from Amayatma Prabhu. He talks about that in his videos, and there's other testimonials. That's my understanding, that a lot of that is that time frame, like kind of in that 45 days where there is no tapes, no recordings available. Just to backtrack a bit, if I may, on the parikram, for me it's impactful. It's a November 10th conversation. And so around, as far as the parikram, there's one that's recorded, and Tamal Krishna Goswami says to Prabhupada, this is suicidal. Some of us think this is suicidal. And then Prabhupada responds, Tamal Krishna Goswami is referring, like, if you go on parikram, it's suicidal. And Tamal Krishna Goswami, he says, we think this is suicidal. You with me?
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. And Prabhupada says, like, to stay here is also suicidal. Now you must choose which one.
Prabhupada says this is also suicidal. Tamal Krishna Goswami says, now you have to choose which suicide. And then Prabhupada gives what I consider a brilliant metaphor. Prabhupada says, Ravana will kill or Ram will kill. Better be killed by Ram. And so again, it's, so that's the Shabda Brahman. And,
let's have a look at the actual.
Sure. It's November 10th. Sure.
Yeah, I've got it here. Jagadish says, Srila Prabhupada, can you tell us why you want to go on the parikram? Because he wants to go on Govardhan parikram.
Yeah.
Bhakti Charu, Bengali to Prabhupada about drinking some milk. Break. Prabhupada says, good Paddy, Tamal Krishna. This seems like suicide, Srila Prabhupada, this program. It seems to some of us like it's suicidal. And Prabhupada says, and this is also suicidal. Tamal Krishna. Prabhupada said, and this is also suicide. Now you have to choose which suicide. Prabhupada. The Ravana will kill and Rama will kill. Better to be killed by Rama, eh? That Maricha. If he does not go to mislead Sita, he'll be killed by Ravana. And if he goes to be killed by Rama, then it is better. Tamal Krishna. Who is this Prabhupada's talking about? Devotees. Maricha. And then Tamal Krishna says, Srila Prabhupada, just judging the symptoms, which is all that we can do, certain symptoms have certainly picked up. For instance, you're passing more urine, stool is coming naturally, and you're able to drink milk without getting any cough. These things were never there before. So if the treatment, Prabhupada, that will continue. Tamal Krishna. So if the treatment is continuing, if the treatment is working, why not continue it under the guidance of this Kaviraj for some time? So this is, it's consistent with two things. It's consistent with Tamal Krishna as the evil mastermind of the conspiracy to poison Prabhupada. It could also be consistent with Tamal Krishna wanting Srila Prabhupada to live and then seeing some improvement in his condition and thinking that going on the parikram would cause a rapid deterioration in the end of his life. So it's like the two pastimes superimposed over each other.
What's your understanding of Srila Prabhupada's Ram Ravana metaphor?
Chris Briscoe has this to say about it. Either Srila Prabhupada is just hallucinating and just saying random things, that are just like, but if you take the theory that Prabhupada is speaking about Lakshana and like indirectly, if we take it as an analogy, Prabhupada is saying that he's going to die either way. So this is the analogy, the points of coincidence. Marichi will die whether he goes to mislead Sita or not. One way he will be killed by Ravana. If he doesn't go, Ravana says, go and take the form of a deer and draw Ram away from Sita. And if Marichi says, no, I don't want to do that, he will be killed by Ravana. So he may not want to do it, but he thinks, I'm going to die if Ram catches me, I'll die. But if I say no, Ravana will kill me. So I'm going to die either way. I now have to choose which death I'll have. So I will choose to die by the hand of Ram. So Prabhupada is indicating that this future pathway of restoring his health, and then, if he doesn't go on Parikram, he will live and recover. He's saying it's going to finish either way. So now I get to choose which way that I'll go. Either sitting here or there. And then if we extend the analogy further and say that this also posits that there's an active agent in both cases, then we could use that to support a theory that Prabhupada is saying that if he stays there where he is, he'll die by the poisoning, and if he goes on the by intentional poisoning, or if he goes on the Parikram, he'll die from his body's deterioration and the effects of going on the Parikram, but he'll die at the while doing Govardhan Parikram. That's my dissertation on that.
Thanks for your dissertation. Well, okay, based on that thesis, you're seeing like in a metaphorical sense, Prabhupada seems to be indicating that to stay here, to stay where he is, that would be equivalent to being killed by Ravana.
Well, that would as far as I understand, he's in the Krishna Balaram Mandir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I don't think that he's comparing dying on Govardhan Parikram to being killed by Ravana. So,
no, I think
in that case,
the Govardhan Parikram indicates Ram.
Being killed by Ram. Yeah, that would
staying in the room where he is would seem to indicate being killed by Ravana.
Yes, that yeah, it's an important conversation, and if we're looking at like what is Srila Prabhupada communicating to us across the years, then that seems to be part of it in his speaking.
I think it's a conversation worthy of consideration, not just for November 77, but for 2025 and future generations.
Yes. So there was the Parikram, there was the telegram asking all the disciples to come, which wasn't never sent.
Yeah.
And then you cited Ami Atma's videos, I presume like his Prabhupada memories, remembering Srila Prabhupada?
Well, I haven't even seen that if they exist, but Ami Atman had some extensive videos, like more than an hour on this topic, or that he produced himself. I could send you a link, or you can contact him. And I'm just saying, like I found it, just worthy of consideration what he's sharing there about. But basically, he shares how he was in California, and his GBC in October 77, and Mami Amma was involved with the Fate Project, the Fate Project, and so the GBC where Ami Atma came back from Vrindavan, India, and told them that Prabhupada's like, kind of seems he's departing, and he specifically told them that Srila Prabhupada does not want you to come and visit me. Stay on your service. Now, a little bit later, it was discovered Prabhupada said the exact opposite. He wants all of his disciples to come and visit him, and for the managers to support that. And Ami Atma says that at some point a little bit later, the GBC admitted to that, and he admitted to it, according to Ami Atma, in a proud way, that I saved ISKCON, because if we followed what Prabhupada wanted, all the temples would have went bankrupt. So basically by lying to all of you, I saved ISKCON. And so it was like a mentality of, and it wasn't just that one GBC. It was quite a coordinated effort amongst the leadership. So I know
a collusion to directly disobey the order of the spiritual master.
Yeah. There's lots of testimonials in that regard.
My phone is still connected. 1 second. Let me just see if I can get rid of it. Okay. This is all in the realm of conjecture, with a less certainty than Srila Prabhupada's direct statements. So we're in the realm of anuman and observations and drawing inferences and connections between them.
Mm-hmm.
And the unfortunate thing about this is that, in my estimate, as a heuristic, the theory turns out to be more useful than a collection of special case circumstantial ones. It's unfortunate that it turns out to be the most effective heuristic. It maps onto the graph, unfortunately, too neatly. That doesn't mean that it's true. It just means that it's useful, and that's unfortunate, because to have such a theory that's useful but not true is problematic, and it's just problematic that it also indicates that it might be truthful.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And you're the fact that it's a very effective, useful heuristic doesn't mean it's true. At the same time, Srila Prabhupada's direct shabda does not close the door on the possibility of it being true.
Yeah. Okay, so we looked at the whispers on the tape, and the whispers on the tape, they're used to substantiate a theory that it definitely was happening and it was deliberate and that disciples were specifically involved in doing it. And is it also used? Are the whispers also used to implicate specific people?
Yes.
So they say that in these whispers you can identify the person who is speaking.
Yeah, through voice print analysis, because all of those persons close to Srila Prabhupada in November 1977, they've given so many lectures. It's easy, just like there's fingerprints, there's voice prints, so they identify at least some of those who are whispering. Yes.
Okay, so that's so we have kind of like the hypothesis. If we say we're going to develop this into a theory, we can draw in other things that happen, like the parikram, Prabhupada speaking there, and if we frame it inside the context of that this is happening, and then interpret his speech in that way, it points us further towards it. What happened with the bringing all of the disciples to Vrindavan and Amiyatma's testimony, and then how that was later apparently, like, where is the testimony? Is this Amiyatma's testimony that later the GBC or a specific GBC proudly announced that I saved ISKCON from bankruptcy? Is the source for that claim Amiyatma's testimony?
I've heard that from Amiyatma.
Okay. Are those videos available publicly?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Okay, great. I'd like to watch those. Because there are some devotees out there who say, I've heard the secret missing tapes and they reveal X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, that's great, but it'd be good if someone else could hear them, because we can only go by what we can, what's on the public record. So what other classes of evidence is there in doing a forensic analysis at a distance of 47 years from the scene of the crime?
Again, and I fully acknowledge the limitations of Anumana approaches, but since you're asking me, then there's the toxicology evidence. Okay, so top world-class toxicologists, forensic toxicologists, have analyzed hair samples from Srila Prabhupada from 1977, multiple hair samples, and those same world-class forensic toxicologists have analyzed multiple hair samples of Srila Prabhupada from pre-1977, and they found on average, the hair samples from 77, well, the hair samples from pre-77 contain normal levels of cadmium, like the same levels we might find in your hair or my hair, like that. And the hair samples from Srila Prabhupada's from 1977 contain, on average, about 25,000% above normal, 250 times above normal. So not 10% more, 20? You mean twice as much? No, 250 times more on average. These top forensic homicidal investigators, toxicologists, they've determined that that there's no plausible way that level of cadmium could get there, other than deliberate homicidal poisoning, meaning like some slight contamination in a medication. It's not even going to come close. It's not even going to be within the exponent of 1,000, like that. So they say the only reasonable explanation is deliberate homicidal poisoning for that level of cadmium. So that's one category. There are others, but I'll pause there.
Okay. I'd like to steelman a cross-examination,
Sure.
if you'll allow me.
Yeah.
So when I first encountered the theory back in the 90s, it was mercury that was theorized to be the poison. And from now having access to the transcripts and analyzing them, I can see that would have been driven by the conversation between the Kaviraj and Srila Prabhupada and the disciples there about the case of the lawyer in Calcutta who poisoned his wife by administering mercury alongside the Makara Dvaja.
Yeah.
And so they initially went looking for mercury, right? And then so opponents refuting the theory, and there are opponents of the theory who are also opponents of the hypothesis itself and the possibility of the hypothesis. So that those are together. They're not just refuting a specific theory, they're refuting any theory on principle.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to make that distinction clear, that those two things seem to be collapsed together. They're not interested in examining relative theories on their relative strengths. They want to dispute any and all theories simply because the possibility itself is null and void and not enter into it. But they say, first the whole thing was about mercury. Now the latest one's cadmium. Whatever will they come up with next? They just keep trying to resurrect this whole thing. So how did it go from mercury to cadmium, and why cadmium?
Okay. Well, I appreciate the history there. So again, world-class forensic laboratories. I'm going to say like forensic professionals. I mean, like those who like when for example, when the top courts want an expert witness, they'll call these professionals. Okay, and again, I understand they're subject to human defects. The primary praman is Prabhupada Shabda, I understand. But if we're talking about the forensics, then the toxicology forensics do support Srila Prabhupada's hypothesis. What they found is that Prabhupada's hair samples from 1977 contain about 250 times cadmium above normal and pre-77 average, and they also found elevated levels of antimony and arsenic, not mercury. And that's what they found. Whatever someone conjectures about the history, that's what the Anumana finds. So the Anumana supports Prabhupada's hypothesis. Basically, the way it works, I'm no expert chemist or toxicologist, but my understanding of the way it works is like they'll test for mercury. They'll test for arsenic. It's not like, let's do a test for everything, all the possible toxic metals. And so at some point, those top forensic scientists, they decided that they didn't think to test for cadmium at first, or just it wasn't on their radar. Now let's test for cadmium, and then whoa, and that's what happened. And so whatever, so someone can be skeptical. Well, first mercury, yeah. So that's what they find. That's what they find is like, I'm not saying like every toxic metal you need a separate test, but it's not that one test and you just find everything. Why didn't they find cadmium in the 1990s? They didn't test for it until later.
My question is more like, why did they test for cadmium and why now?
Why did they test for cadmium?
Yeah, who directed them and what was the thinking behind that? Because that's obviously someone has a theory that maybe it was cadmium poisoning. We should check for that, and then directs them to check for cadmium.
Okay.
Do you know how that came about? Who did that, and what was the thinking behind it?
Okay. My understanding, and this is all clearly documented. I'm not claiming I have all of the documentation, all the documentation perfectly memorized. But my understanding is Dr. J. Stephen Morris. He was the research director for the University of Missouri nuclear research reactor, which somehow or other, the top nuclear research reactor for universities in all of the United States happens to be the University of Missouri. So this is like the top college university reactor in the United States. And he was the research director. And after having the hair samples for some time, he got the idea to check for cadmium, and he did. He had previously checked for arsenic and antimony and mercury. He got the idea to check for cadmium a little bit after, and that's what happened.
Is there anywhere where this chain of like can be examined? Like, where would I go to find out about this? Is it documented anywhere?
It is. Yeah, there's books, there's articles. I can easily send you all of that easily.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Everybody always says, you need to read my book. And I'm like, listen, when Prabhupada was asked, you know, who's the supreme personality of Godhead? He didn't say, you need to read my book. He quoted, you know, Sarvasya Prabhavo. He just like banged it out. So Chris Briscoe's got you back with a quote here. He says, cadmium came from the GBC's own discarded samples. See page 31 of book 1 from the Personal Ambition series.
Thank you, Christopher Briscoe.
Does that sound like the right place to you?
Yeah, that's one of the right. There's others. There's also the Hidden Glory. There's the Hidden Glory series and the Personal Ambition series. So you'll get this information. Yeah, Christopher knows his stuff.
He's chapter and verse, this guy.
Yeah,
Okay.
Triumphant Departure, Hidden Glories, and Personal Ambition. And so it's in at least 2 of those books. Details including the signed letters from Dr. J. Stephen Morris, where he gives his results with the with the tables and the confidence intervals and the statistics. It's all there.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, the chain of custody of the sample and the provenance of the sample and possibility of contamination of the sample after. There's a whole, there's worlds of probabilistic, probability.
But if we're
involved.
talking about Anumana, look, these are top forensic toxicologists in the world. It's not like, oh, we didn't think to check about whether someone just poured some cadmium on it. Oh my God, thanks for letting us. No, like they're experts at this. And so in the reports, Dr. J. Stephen Morris, he said, we did this test and we examined it this way and that way. In the chain of custody, it's all GBC representatives, as Briscoe said. It's Hari Sari Prabhu, Shesha Prabhu. It's all GBC representatives. That's the chain of custody. It's their discarded samples that they did not choose to invest $5,000 to examine, and so, but the samples were there. So the chain of custody is for all. I think there's at least 6, maybe 7 hair samples, and all of them. The chain of custody in detail is thoroughly documented. You can read it. Christopher can send you the books. I can send books. I can send you a hard copy. I can send you electronic copy. The chain of custody is thoroughly documented. The validity of the look. These are J. Stephen Morris. He's conducted thousands of tests on his with his instrumentation. He was the research director at University of Missouri. So like they've thought about things like that. Again, I understand the whole methodology is based on logical positivism. It's imperfect. But if we're talking about Anumana, it's very rigorously documented and validated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I have like a rhetorical defeater for the whole thing. which is just, it's a flippant one that plays into people's distrust in the scientific method today. And it's simply to say, did they test to see if he died of COVID? And of course, that plays into the, they say anyone died of COVID because they had an economic incentive, of course, to return a positive result because they got paid for it. I've been conducting this, this inquiry with you like at a very intellectual level. But on this particular point here, I want to reveal something about my emotional kind of response to this whole thing. And this was like really personified by my wife, Dana Devi, who, when we were listening to another podcast of someone who was defeating the very possibility that Srila Prabhupada could have been given poison by someone deliberately with the intent to kill him. And speaking on this exact topic, like, the forensics, this, that, and the other thing. And it's interesting. And what brought it to my mind is you said that they had the samples, but they didn't spend the $5,000 to do the test.
Yeah.
While he was defeating the whole thing, my wife just said, he's just like not interested in finding out what the truth is. He's diminishing everything that they're doing, but at least they're doing something to try to find out what happened. And like, if nothing else, because the possibility of the hypothesis is introduced by Srila Prabhupada and is left open by him, it is just simply a service to Srila Prabhupada to do the inquiry, no matter how faulty, no matter what no matter what the endeavor, it's just like, yeah. And like, what I really got present to was this idea that everybody who's involved in this is some kind of like maliciously motivated, hater who's got an axe to grind, and it's like their childhood trauma playing out is it's a diminishment of, what I'm not necessarily saying that doesn't get mixed into it. And of course it does. And that's, speaking to the earlier point about the consequentialist managerial idea of shut it down, on the walkie-talkie, shut it down. But that to throw out, to just lump into that anyone who has a commitment to the truth and to discovering to the best of our ability what happened, even if we might face, whatever kind of criticism or blowback or consequences. Yeah. Anyway, that's just what's there for me right now as you're talking about that.
Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I appreciate that you're not in line or resonant with the approach. Like, let's just shut it down, because you're seeing simply based on Prabhupada's words, as you said, Prabhupada left open that hypothesis. So those who regard it as one of their services to Srila Prabhupada, to let's honestly explore this hypothesis. You're not supporting that they be ridiculed and vilified and demonized and shut down as some sort of lunatics or malicious, whatever. That's painful for you to say. You're sure Prabhupada would not support that.
I'm sure that Srila Prabhupada would appreciate the devotion of the people doing it, even if they, faulty though the endeavor may be. Mm. Yeah. I mean, if you hear Srila Prabhupada say that and you want to do something about it and you go out to do it, I mean, I might say that those people were wrong. I might say that intermediate conclusions or even total theories that they come up with are wrong, but I would acknowledge that it's done in service of Srila Prabhupada and out of the sense of their conscience. And yeah. So yeah, I acknowledge that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, I know I mean, since 1997 as one of my services, as one amongst many of my endeavors to serve Srila Prabhupada in some way, yeah, that I've gotten a lot of appreciation from many sincere followers of Srila Prabhupada, and I've gotten a lot of criticism and ridicule and vilification. So that's in my endeavors on this topic. That's all I've experienced, all of that. Yeah, and that's why I'm appreciating you and your podcast, you and your wife, to create this forum for a truly open, honest discussion. Let's examine this with logic, rationality, and devotion to Srila Prabhupada. I appreciate that you're creating that very much.
Speaking of my wife, here she is with a comment on that point, Prabhu. She says, when people are defensive and minimize the endeavor, it's a giveaway to something sinister that they're trying to cover up. It's a huge red flag. That's not a logical, a strong logical conclusion. That is female intuition at work.
Hare Krishna. I appreciate Dana Alvarez Prabhu, your comment, and thank you, Sitapati, for your comment on her comment. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
One thing I notice about feminine intuition is that they have like an ability to use heuristics to arrive at like advanced conclusions that they can't support through logical reasoning.
To cut through the unnecessary complications that obscure the clear, simple essence.
Yes. Okay, so here's a question from Chris Briscoe. He says, one question I heard from Maheshwara Das is, if the evidence is so good, which Chris thinks it is, then why has it not gone to a court? Can Dhira Govinda say anything on that? Prabhu, before we answer that question, can I just ask you this? We've looked at the analysis of Srila Prabhupada's own statements, the whispers tapes, the analysis of the indistinct whispers in the background by a forensic audio forensics lab, the forensic analysis of Srila Prabhupada's hair samples that reveal that they had elevated levels of cadmium and arsenic and antimony, if I remember correctly, that shows a pattern of elevating from 1976 to 1977, where it reaches 250x in the case of cadmium of a normal person. Are there any other classes of evidence that we haven't touched on before we go to this?
Well, one I'll mention is the area of medical forensics. So a team of medical forensic examiners, again, top medical forensic examiners, have determined that cadmium poisoning explains Srila Prabhupada's symptoms, and other explanations don't. And so other explanations might explain some of the symptoms, but they don't explain symptoms like photophobia and things like that. So the best explanation for Prabhupada's symptoms and cause of death, of course, we understand Prabhupada left of his own will and co-creation with Krishna, but the medical examiners trained in forensic, they've dealt with thousands of cases. They say cadmium poison fits it precisely. Hare Krishna.
So the photophobia point that you brought up of the symptoms clusters, so that's visible. You can see the photo of Srila Prabhupada at Bhaktivedanta Manor in London in 1977, and of course he's wearing the sunglasses, which is, far as I'm aware, the only photo where you see Srila Prabhupada wearing sunglasses. Like, he doesn't wear sunglasses, but at that point in his life he was wearing them. And so you're saying that he was wearing the sunglasses, which you can see in the photo, which he doesn't do apart from that, because he had developed the symptom of photophobia where light entering his eyes was troublesome to him, and that's not consistent with the cause of death that may have been listed on the death certificate of like complications from diabetes mellitus, but it is consistent with the symptoms of being poisoned with one of these.
Correct. Yeah. The cadmium poison explains all the symptoms that diabetes and kidney problems explain, plus the other constellation of symptoms that the other attempted diagnoses don't explain. So you have the medical diagnosis, you have the toxicology, you have the audio forensics, to whatever extent we want to give it weight, and they all support Srila Prabhupada's statements, hypothesis of his Srila Prabhupada's suggestion that he maybe be given poison. And the GBC official position today is there is no evidence whatsoever that Srila Prabhupada was given poison. As your wife indicated, that in itself indicates a whole nother category of evidence if there's nothing to cover up.
Methinks the lady doth protest too much. I mean, the other thing in that category for me is the pattern of the manipulation of the transcripts of the actual hypothesis itself, where it's obscured. The Hindi is not transcribed and then translated. The translation that we are getting seems to contain some potentially some errors in it. And the other thing is the insertion of the metadata of Prabhupada smiling as he answers this question.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which is like a, what is that? Okay, so these are all evidences that support the hypothesis that Srila Prabhupada was given poison and that the poison effectively contributed to his final pastime. Is there any other evidence for that? And or, how do we move to the whodunit conjecture?
Those are what I regard as the major categories. There are other things, but I feel complete for now for this conversation about that. The medical forensics, the audio forensics, the toxicology, Srila Prabhupada's own words, the Shabda Praman.
And the
cover-up and the apparent cover-up. Yeah.
Yeah, which may have a couple of different interpretations, but neither of them bode well. They're both philosophical deviations. And also just potentially criminal conspiracy accessory after the fact, which yeah, why would you? In the name of, and then especially after everything that we've seen happen, it's like it's the enablement of, it's just literally, it's enablement.
Yeah.
Just as a principle.
It's that's an effective, practical, and legal word to describe it. Yeah. Sad but true. It's the best heuristic.
I mean, do you want to look at do you have in your theory, the main theory you have, is there a who did it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what you've read from Truth Labs on the Justice for Srila Prabhupada website. Truth Labs gives a summary, just a summary, maybe it's a few pages. And yeah, I mean, my understanding from the forensic team is their suspects include Tamal Krishna Goswami, Bhavananda Prabhu. That's my understanding.
Okay. And then keeping in mind that, as you said, for all we know, they may be anyone, those specific personalities or anyone involved may be Jai Vijay carrying out actually, undoubtedly, it's like they have to be. You don't get to stand next to Srila Prabhupada and perform that pastime, It's Leela on another level. And then on the material level of what we can see on the eyeballs of the human, there's friends and enemies that we consider. And then at a higher level, just as we see with Hiranyakashipu and Nrsingadev.
Yeah. Well, even if one considers, maybe they're like Ravana and Hiranyakashipu. Okay, if someone wants to go there, again, someone can go there.
Well, it's supported by Prabhupada's own analogy of Ram and Ravana, right? Indicated by his words.
One could say that, yeah. Importantly, we don't follow Ravana. Even if this is Jai from the spiritual world, we don't follow Ravana. We follow Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, very clear distinction. So can we go back to Chris's question? Why has it not gone to court if the evidence is so good? This is, from the haters. They're like, hey, if all your evidence is so good, then see you in court. What's stopping you?
Okay. My understanding is there are plans to take this to court. We're Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation. Again, I was a founding director. I'm no longer serving as director. I'm closely in an advisory communication capacity. But my understanding is, Justice for Srila Prabhupada Foundation hasn't gotten any semblance of cooperation from the ISKCON GBC, and that there are plans to take this to the legal arenas. There are plans for that. As far as Dhira Govinda, why didn't you show up at the courthouse in Uttar Pradesh? I mean, I know I'm endeavoring to do my service. The legal arena, it's not really my area of experience or even interest. So it's not been my service, and that could be my limitation. My understanding is for sure, the ISKCON powers that be just are ready to amass great attacks, including investing finances to crush any attempt, even at a peep of honest, truthful conversation about this, what to speak if it were to go to court. At the same time, my understanding is there are plans from highly skilled and effective legal teams to take this to court. What the outcomes will be, I don't know.
I wonder what the structure of it would be as well, because would it be a civil case or a criminal case against specific individuals? Like what kind of yeah. Do you have any sense of that?
My understanding is these things are being discussed and have been discussed. And,
yeah.
I don't want to go to areas of conjecture that it's really not my field, but
Sure.
I'll say such things are being discussed. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the truth of the matter for me doesn't rely on the outcome of a court case. Even if they came out in the court case and said X, Y, or Z, it's like, so I'm just saying in advance, like whether they, as I said right at the outset, you could put the person in jail and put it in Wikipedia and teach children in school for 20 years. And then 20 years later, it gets reversed. So either a conviction or a discharge, and that is just more data into the whole thing.
I really like that you're saying that, Sitapati, because that's my view. It's always been my view. And like I'm looking at my main praman is Srila Prabhupada, and then I give some way to the different Anumana directions. And for me, it's just like I only believe what's proved in court. No, that's not me at all.
Where's the Bhagavad Gita proved in court? Yeah.
Right. So I'm like that too. For me, it would be like another piece of information from the world of the mind and senses. And I'm not discounting it would be useless, but there are teams who are bringing it to the legal arena, and I'm completely in agreement with you. Whether it comes an acquittal or conviction, that's like, well, that's what I'll put my trust in. So I'm in agreement with you there.
Yeah, and just building on my wife's acknowledgement in that conversation, I didn't notice it at all. I was listening to the arguments, and what he was saying and analyzing the rhetoric and thinking about like how I would present it or how I would deal with that if I was on the other side, all that kind of thing. And then my wife's like, he's just like dismissing all the people who are doing it. And, they're like, at least they're interested in like finding out, pursuing it. So no matter which way it goes and no matter what people say about the motivations and, they're just haters and they're just envious. And, I acknowledge them and I acknowledge you for the work that you've done and following up rigorously and diligently on Srila Prabhupada's hypothesis that he put forward.
Thank you, Sitapati, and thank you, Donna Devi. I know she's not, but I appreciate Jesus appreciating the sincere devotional effort. That means a lot to me, and I appreciate your support for this endeavor for truth, for Srila Prabhupada and his mission. And I appreciate you. You're willing to endeavor to objectively look at the facts and to emphasize Srila Prabhupada's praman. Yeah, let's hear from Srila Prabhupada. And so I so much appreciate what you're doing in this effort.
Someone's asking the question, was Prabhupada poisoned or not? It's complicated.
Well, it's complicated at the same time. If whoever asked that, I think if someone gives attention to these 2.5, 3 hours, they'll get deeper realization of the Siddhanta regarding Prabhupada's departure pastime. I believe that.
Let me test these logical postulates and the structure of this argument on you, Prabhu, as a conclusion. There are the 6, the Saddarshans of the Veda, the Vedanta, they differ in their conclusions, but they agree on the source of truth of the Veda. And there are the Shramana religions like Jainism and Buddhism who agree on some conclusions, but because they differ on the source of truth, we consider them to be outside.
Yeah, true.
Given that Srila Prabhupada has advanced the hypothesis and said that it is possible, then on that basis, two schools could develop. One school that says that it did happen, and another school that says that it did not happen, and they point back to the same Shabda Praman as their basis.
The same source of truth.
And they can be considered to be bona fide conclusions, theories built on top of that. What is outside of that is anyone who makes the claim that it is not possible, because they have contradicted the fundamental Shabda Praman, and thus they have become like the Shramanas and left the shelter of the Veda.
What you're saying makes sense to me, and it seems founded in the epistemology that Srila Prabhupada gave us and emphasized for us, and I appreciate that spirit. And based on what I've heard from Prabhupada and the Anumana Pratyaksha I've seen, to me it seems there's reasonable cause to suspect that Prabhupada was criminally poisoned. I'd like that view is at least respected. I'm not saying everyone needs to agree with it, or everyone who hears from Prabhupada, they'll come to my same conclusion, but I'd like that at least that point of view, based primarily on Prabhupada's Smriti Praman, is at least honored and respected and accepted amongst the diversity of reasonable points of view. I would love that.
Yeah, and for me, I'm like, maybe it happened. Like my son said, if someone had the means and the motive, you can't rule it out. And given that Srila Prabhupada has not ruled it out and has ruled it in as a possibility, anyone who's out here, this is me saying, based on the logic of that, anyone who's out here saying that it absolutely could not happen is either like philosophically deviant, without knowing, because they've possibly internalized this consequentialist argument about shut it down so that it doesn't interfere with what's happening, or they are and in either case, they're either consciously or unconsciously, potentially, according to Srila Prabhupada's statement, an accessory after the fact.
Yeah, that's a heavy statement, and I do regard it as a valid statement, as I shared earlier in our conversation. Even before I was inclined to believe that there's reasonable cause to suspect that Prabhupada was criminally poisoned, the idea it couldn't have happened because Prabhupada's a pure devotee or like that seemed outside. It's deviant to basic Vaishnava philosophy.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to say to conclude, Prabhu? Let me put your website up here so people, well, it's not your website, it's a website that you contributed to and founded.
It's very dear to me, that website. I was a founding director. I appreciate this conversation. I feel relieved and very inspired by the opportunity for such open, honest conversation where I need to look at my assumptions, and you're honestly assessing things with a spirit of discovery. This is so life enriching and inspirational. Thank you, and I appreciate the viewers now and those who will watch the video in the future. I appreciate you for giving your attention to this conversation, and I'm emphasizing the part of the conversation where we really endeavor to look at Prabhupada's Praman, Prabhupada's vibration.
Thank you, Prabhu. You've made a huge contribution to the movement in many different areas, and I don't know why, but I just keep running into you in each one of them as I go through them. We our paths cross yet again. It's always a pleasure, and it is enriching to my life. And thank you for having this rigorous conversation with me, not being positional about, wanting to establish this definitely and being open to possibility, and being such a stand for Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada speaking and what Srila Prabhupada wanted and what he ordered us to do, the instructions that he left for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sitapati Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.